Monday, August 28th. We welcome all those that are here in attendance, and this is not our normal stomping grounds. So I will ask this. Nick, can you hear us in the back? Loud and clear? Okay. Thank you, folks, for being here. Currently, our council chambers are having some modifications done. We anticipate that work to be complete for our next regularly scheduled meeting, the second Monday in September. So please bear with us as we have a little bit different format than we're used to this evening. We have agendas that were pre-printed and also put on our website. If you'd like an agenda, they're out in the hall on a table. We have some items I'd like to bring to your attention on tonight's agenda. We do not have a lengthy agenda. Most of the items are actually on the consent agenda. If you'd like to speak during Citizens to be Heard, there's a form to fill out, and again, those are out in the hallway. If you fill one out and bring it to our clerk or one of our officers, they'll bring it to the clerk, and we will recognize you during Citizens to be Heard, which is item number 8 on the agenda. Again, just some highlights. We would point out that we would hope that you would be thoughtful of the people that are currently in Houston, in that area of South Texas that have devastating water and floods. 3 of our very own members of Tennessee Task Force 1 have been deployed, and they're there on the ground helping those individuals. So please keep those folks in your thoughts and prayers this evening. Again, tonight our meeting is here at the Great Hall, and we will return at our next meeting. This evening, our invocation was to be led by Tony Fisher, who's being deployed. Will be led by Pam Beasley. Our Vice Mayor, Mary Ann Gibson, will lead us in the pledge. Please rise.
Let us pray. Gracious and Heavenly Father, you are the source of all of our blessings, and we are grateful for every gift that we have been given. We thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. As we focus on city business, Lord, let your love and grace show through every one of us. Let us speak your counsel, remember your teachings, and rely on your word. And above all, help us to live with intentional goodness every day, as this commitment will lift our hearts and sustain our souls. Father, we pray for the people whose lives have been devastated by the rain and the floods, especially our neighbors in Texas and along the Gulf Coast. Deliver and keep safe any who are still in danger, and bring hope and healing to those who need relief and restoration. We pray for those who are working hard to save the lives under imaginable circumstances. Give the rescue teams courage in danger and compassion in service. Sustain them with bodily strength and calmness of mind, that they may perform their work to the well-being of those in need, so that lives may be saved and communities restored. We ask all these things in your precious name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Brings us to item number 4 on the agenda this evening, which is the approval of the agenda. The board meets in executive session at 5:30 prior to the traditional meeting, goes over the agenda at that time. During those discussions, it was agreed upon by the board to put item number 10 from the regular agenda, Professional Services Agreement, CDBG 2011 Disaster Recovery Grant, to put that item on the consent agenda. That item will now be item L on the consent agenda. It was also agreed upon to move item 6B, Resolution 17R16, to take the place of item 10, and that will be the last item on the agenda this evening. So again, item 6B moves to item 10. Item 10 moves to the consent agenda as item L. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as modified and adopted?
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Borzissa?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda.
Yes.
The agenda has been adopted by the board. That brings us to item number 5 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting on Monday, August the 14th, 2017. There were no modifications in executive session. Are there any at this time? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Move to approve.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
Yes.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Barzizza.
Yes.
Minutes have been approved. Brings us to item number 6 on the agenda, Special Recognition, Beautification Commission Business Award. Vice Mayor Gibson will make that presentation, perhaps with some assistance. Vice Mayor?
Correct. If I could ask our Parks and Recreation Director, Pam Beasley, to come forward. We also have our beautification chair, Mr. Clifton Gurley, Sue Sharp, as well as our representative from Methodist Hospital, Laura. I believe I saw Laura here. And Pam, if you will, again, when you hear some of the words that are getting ready to be discussed as far as the plantings, you'll know why I've asked Pam to give this introduction. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The purpose of this agenda item is to recognize the historic Baptist Church located on the Methodist Le Bonheur Germantown Hospital campus as the recipient of the August Beautification Business Award. And just on behalf of the mayor and aldermen, we appreciate you all being here. As we all know, those of us that live here and drive by that historic site every day have noticed the transformation over the past year in that historic site, and the Beautification Commission voted a unanimous vote in making sure that Methodist Hospital and all the volunteers associated with that project were recognized for your efforts. Besides being a historic site and undergoing a massive renovation, tonight what we focus on really are the grounds and the landscape that has been maintained by the Methodist Le Bonheur grounds crews. And the design is in keeping with the character of the building and features over 50 trees, including autumn blaze maple, Yoshino cherry, sweet bay magnolia, cryptomeria, and Nellie Stevens holly. To add depth and dimension to the landscape, hardy shrubs like willow leaf holly and native grasses were also included in the design. And to complete the planting palette, liriope and a lush ground cover with over 100 different black-eyed Susans are there to provide vibrant yellow color all summer and into the fall. So on behalf of the city, we appreciate all the work that Methodist Hospital and the crews do to maintain that grounds. I know you all are proud of your facility, and the citizens here in Germantown are proud as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. The board echoes those sentiments. We appreciate when our businesses take care of property and make those properties look good in our community, so we do appreciate that greatly. That brings us to item number 7 on the agenda. That's Alderman liaison reports. Our aldermen serve as liaisons to our boards and commissions that meet on a monthly basis. We go from position 1 through 5. Alderman Barzizza.
Thank you, Mayor. The Senior Advisory Commission met on August 17th. Basically, the majority of the conversation during the meeting was in regards to the Senior Expo, which will take place on November 2nd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're tickled to death. We're back to our old digs, and many thanks to Phil. The Historic Commission did not have a quorum, so there's really nothing to report. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. The Education Commission met for the first time. We are proceeding with our plans for the Battle of the Brains, which is a STEM competition that will be held in February here at Houston High School, that will feature area high schools and other team members that will come together for the competition. We also discussed having some speakers that will be coming in at the elementary level, so more will be forthcoming on that. Next report would be for our Neighborhood Preservation Commission. We are meeting as a subcommittee for the Home-Based Business Task Force. Those discussions are ongoing. And again, preparation for the Neighborhood Summit in October. The Beautification Commission will meet again next month there at Parks and Rec, and that's my report for tonight, sir.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Alderman Massey.
The Personnel Advisory Commission met on August 28th. The focus of this meeting was to review and make recommendations for calendar year 2018 regarding the city's health plan, including the employee and retiree deductibles, premiums, and the benefit coverage limits for dental and vision. The recommendations will be forwarded to the city administrator for consideration in the next action step. The plan year begins January 1, and notice of changes to employees and retirees is expected on November 1st.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan process is proceeding on schedule. The design team is in town this week for another series of public engagement opportunities. Any interested citizen can attend their midpoint presentation at the Pickering Center this Thursday evening, either at 4 p.m. or at 6 p.m. Presentation will last about 45 minutes, with designers being available for questions and comments afterwards. Also, don't forget to complete the online survey, which is available until Friday, September 1st. You can find the link on the city's social media sites or call the Parks and Recreation Department for assistance. Also, I'd like to congratulate the Bobby Lanier Farm Park, Inc. Board of Directors for another successful Harvest Moon party at the farm park. This advocacy group raised $57,000 in cash and contributions and over $89,000 of financial support for the farm park through their one-night annual fundraiser, which was August 18th. Thanks to all involved and the 400 guests for supporting this special park amenity.
Let's a round of applause.
I think so.
Thank you. Lots going on down on the farm. Alderman Yonda.
No report.
No report. From the mayor's office, just a few congratulations to some of our staff members. Sarah Goraleski received her Urban Forestry Advisor Certificate from the Tennessee Urban Forestry Council after completion of training course, exam, and volunteer hours. So if you can pass that on, Cameron, to her, congratulations. Also, Stephen Carter was promoted to shop foreman. He will take the place, or try to take the place, of Benny Holland, who recently retired. Also, we have one of our firemen, Gino Del Oso, received the Kiwanis Regional Firefighter of the Year Award and was recently acknowledged for that at the Germantown Kiwanis meeting. And I will just share with the community that over the last 2 weeks, we've had Moody's and Standard & Poor's visit the city to look at our financial wherewithal, and they have not issued their report yet, but by all accounts, they were very impressed with their 2-day stay here in our community, and we hope for the best as far as a rating coming forward. And I will also just remind the community we don't have a meeting until this particular date, but the Germantown Festival begins on September 9th and 10th, and if you're a longtime Germantown resident and you know Melba Fristic and you see her during the festival, pat her on the back, give her a hug, a kiss, and say thank you for many years of service. She's retiring from that position, and this will be the 46th annual Germantown Festival. So put that on your calendar as well. That concludes Alderman liaison reports and takes us to citizens to be heard. In a moment, I'll call your name to come forward. You'll come forward to the microphone. You may have to adjust it for your height. When you come forward, you'll state your name, address with zip code, and then I'm going to read our ground rules for citizens to be heard. Citizens to be heard is designed to gain input from the public and not for immediate responses by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. The intent of this agenda item is to provide the public a platform to be thoughtfully heard and not a forum for dialogue, discussion, or verbal exchange with the board. While the board cannot assure each speaker of a specific or individualized future response, the board will consider the public comments and any supporting materials provided by the speaker. Public comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per resident. Speakers are asked to refrain from using names of personnel or names of persons connected with the city, particularly when lodging a complaint. Speakers will not be permitted to engage in gossip, hearsay, make defamatory comments, or abusive or vulgar language. First person up this evening, if you would step forward, is Audrey Grossman. If you could come forward to the podium and state your name, address, and zip code, and you'll have 3 minutes from that time to speak to the board.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone, for providing this opportunity for citizens to speak. My name is Audrey Grossman. I reside at 8530 Windy Oaks Cove here in Germantown. I've been a resident for 14 years. I want to thank you, Mayor, for proposing this resolution to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry. I'm frankly amazed that this resolution has any opposition and that it has generated the controversy that it has. I'm grateful to all the people who have come out tonight to support this measure. This is a statement from our city leadership against bigotry and hate. It's not a law, it's not an ordinance, it's a statement of values, and they're values that I would hope everyone in this room shares. It's not Republican, it's not Democrat, it's not liberal, it's not conservative. It's a matter of common decency, in my view. I've heard some opponents say that this resolution could lead to suppression of free speech. Speech and viewpoints are not hate crimes. Our First Amendment protects even hateful or bigoted speech so long as it doesn't incite violence. This resolution poses no threat to free speech. It's not a law, it doesn't suppress anything. Any laws that might be enacted or enforced, as is stated in the resolution, are subject to both legislative and judicial review to ensure that they don't infringe our rights under the Constitution. Others feel that this is unnecessary. However, unfortunately, there has been a very disturbing increase in intimidation and violence against minorities, including the use of Nazi symbols and words that echo the greatest evils of the last century and which are personally threatening to me. A newcomer to our city that I just met shared with me today that the person who sold her family their house was asked by a neighbor, are the new people black or white? What a welcome to this city that is. This, plus recent racist slurs left on a black pastor's car recently in our neighboring town of Collierville, lead me to believe that this statement of leadership and of values from our city is indeed very necessary here and now. The German pastor and anti-Nazi dissident Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who died a prisoner in the Flossenburg concentration camp in 1945, wrote, "Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Thank you, Mayor and Aldermen, for speaking and acting to affirm your opposition to the evils of extremism, hate, and bigotry.
Thank you, ma'am. If we could please refrain from clapping. Our Board of Mayor and Alderman meetings in the past have been very much a very calm setting, so even if the spirit moves you, if we can hold applause, actually have no applause, in fairness to everyone who's here this evening. Next speaker will be Harold Steinberg. Mr. Steinberg, if you could come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record. Once you do so, you'll have 3 minutes to speak to the board.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Harold Steinberg. I reside at 8377 Willow Oak Road, Germantown 38139. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for proposing this resolution. I fully support it. I need to give you a little bit of background. My family has suffered from Nazi persecution. My own family has several members who did not make it out of Lithuania. My wife's family has over 20 members who were killed by the Nazis. And so when I see in other cities individuals who profess to be neo-Nazis or white supremacists, I take great offense to that. Here in this city, my uncle, who was president of an Orthodox congregation, had anti-Jewish slurs left on his front porch and cherry bombs, firecrackers, whatever, if you will. And so I would say to all of you aldermen and alderwomen that this isn't a resolution that deserve your full support. You may notice that I'm wearing the emblem of the Neighborhood International here on my cap. And so our organization has also taken a firm stance against this. And in response to Charlottesville, I would just want to read one sentence, which is, there is no doubt that the white supremacists and neo-Nazis, with their vulgar messages of violence and exclusion, must be called out in unambiguous terms at the highest level. And so I thank you for your kind attention. I urge you to vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, audience, for not clapping. I appreciate that. Or the alternative. The next speaker, and forgive me, I think it's Christy Sneed, but I may not have the first name correct. If you could come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes from that point.
My name is Christy Sneed. I live at 2102 East Glen Alden Drive, Germantown 38139. I've been a resident here over 30 years and have enjoyed the loving, welcoming, safe community we have here in Germantown. And I thank you, Mayor and Alderman, for helping us keep it that way. I stand with the mayor in his motivation to speak out for our community and to affirm that our community is a community that welcomes all nationalities, all races, all people of faith, differing faiths, and that we strive to live in a community that resists extremism in any form, hatred, violence against any other group. I stand with him in that motivation. My concern is the document itself and how it is written. I think it needs to be studied a little longer and perhaps simplified, because I'm of the old adage to keep it simple. And I think just a basic statement from the very beginning of the resolution is adequate, because we already have the laws in place that we can prosecute people for actions that we know are against the law and are filled with hate and violence, and we need to be sure we do that. But the thing that bothers me is a couple of the whereas, and my iPad won't work today in this building, and I had it listed, but a couple of the whereas, for example, states that we would make sure the police would get the training and that the ADL would provide this and so forth and so on. And then in another whereas that we would encourage curriculum to be added, and the ADL would provide the curriculum and so forth. That bothers me, because we're then connecting ourselves to another organization. And I think we have the resources in our community to do our training and to get our own curriculum. They can study this curriculum and decide if this is a curriculum they want to have. But I do not think we should have that in the resolution itself to tie us to this particular organization. And I have gone to the websites and I have studied the ADL, and it's a marvelous organization that was started to protect the Jewish community during World War II, and very successful and very needed, and it continues to fight for justice. But I just think that we don't need to add that to our resolution, because it binds us in a way to that organization when we have the resources in our own community to handle these situations.
You have 15 seconds.
Okay. And then there was one of the other thing is this, encouraging the police to teach people how to report hate crimes and hate incidents, and that they and other people. That really bothers me, and that should bother our Jewish friends as well, because Hitler, one of his tools was to teach the children to squeal on their parents if they said anything against the government. And I just think that's too broad.
Please conclude.
That's too broad.
Okay. Thank you for speaking
All right.
today.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it very, very much. Next speaker will be, again, I hope I pronounced the name right, Peggy Duhamel. If you could come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes from that point.
Thank you.
You need to adjust your microphone if you'd like.
I was afraid
Yeah.
to knock it on.
No, it's fine.
My name is Peggy Duhamel. The last name is spelled D-U-H-A-M-E-L. I live at 2104 Duntreath Meadows, Germantown, zip code 38139. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I appreciate the opportunity. As I said, I am a resident of Germantown. I'm a wife, I'm a mother. I'm involved in my community and with my neighbors. And I'm speaking tonight in support of resolution number 17R16, combating hate, extremism, and bigotry. I am the author of the letter that became the petition to support this resolution. That petition was delivered by email this morning to the mayor and the board of aldermen. The petition was started Friday morning and had 350 signatures by this morning. Some of the people who signed the petition and support the resolution are also here tonight. Words are important and they're reflective of our community. Some people may say that the resolution is meaningless and simply a feel-good action. Other people have said that the resolution infringes on their right of free speech. No one is proposing that free speech rights be violated. This is a statement of support of laws that we already have on the books. Germantown is built on values of inclusion and equality, and we must oppose all proponents of hate. We must adopt policy that states that we will not tolerate hate, bigotry, or extremism. My daughter is 16 years old. She's learning to drive, she's going to high school, thinking about college, and a lot about her boyfriend. She's also an immigrant and a person of color. The morning after the events in Charlottesville, she asked me if I thought she would have to go to an internment camp. She also wants to carry her passport around with her in the event someone stops her and questions whether she should be here. She and others are already experiencing hateful comments and are fearful. There was the incident in Collierville a couple of weeks ago where African American's pastor was spray painted with racist hate speech. And this is on all of us. We need to step up to the plate and say it is not okay.
You have 15 seconds if you could conclude.
Okay. The proposed resolution is not a measure of politics. It's not a matter of where one falls on the political spectrum. It's something that everybody needs to support, and it's important for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Mary Green. Ms. Green, if you could come forward and state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes when you conclude, and you can move it down a little bit.
Hello, my name is Mary Green, and I live at 1765 Dickens Cove, 38139. I've lived in the Grove Park subdivision behind Houston Middle School for the past 18 years. Today, Germantown has an opportunity to take a stand and show that we, as a community, will not tolerate racism, extremism, or bigotry in our city by adopting resolution number 17R16. Yes, it is troubling that such a resolution needs to be adopted, but given recent events, it is the right thing to do. Our community is diverse. My neighborhood is diverse. For instance, on my street are citizens originally from Iran, Pakistan, Russia, China, and India. And as you can imagine, we all practice different religions and follow different cultural beliefs. We are Germantown. I understand that some who oppose this resolution believe it will be misused as a political hammer to shut down any opposition if someone disagrees, regardless of whether those views are extreme or hateful. To which I reply, a resolution is not a law. It is a statement that shows support for something. It expresses values. values that we think are important. It is vital that Germantown stand with other cities across the nation in support of diversity and tolerance, and in opposition to racism, extremism, and bigotry. We must not be silent. This morning, I'm the one who forwarded to you, the mayor, and to all the aldermen and alderwomen, a petition in support of the resolution, which includes 350 signatures. I hope my words are representative of those petitioners who are not able to be here to speak tonight. We are all wearing blue as a sign of unity. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our last speaker this evening will be Mr. Bill Ray. Mr. Ray, if you could come forward, state your name, address, and zip code for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Bill Ray. I live at 2795 Burroughs Farm Cove, 38138. And I am in opposition to this resolution. I only found out about the resolution being on the agenda this weekend. I've emailed all the aldermen as of this morning. I had positive responses from a couple and opportunity to speak to another alderman before the meeting, and 2 others were non-committal responses. I really only have 2 statements that I'd like to make. We don't need a resolution in Germantown to combat imaginary problems. To the best of my knowledge, I've lived here over 40 years. To the best of my knowledge, we've never had any rallies supporting hate, extremism, or bigotry, and I hope we never will. This resolution would serve no purpose except to make a few people feel good. We're blessed to have good policemen, good firemen. They take good care of us here. And as was said once before, we have laws to address these issues if they become a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. That concludes citizens to be heard, and I would like to personally thank all the citizens who came forward. I'd also like to personally thank everyone in attendance for having the utmost decorum. That is the Germantown way, so we greatly appreciate that
Mayor.
as well.
Apologize.
Yes.
I believe there are a few people in the back that had not gotten their comments up or their cards. I didn't know if you were still accepting those.
Are there any other citizens to be heard cards that want to come forward? Come forward now. You may come forward. If you can pass it to the officer and then just state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Joanne Rhodes, 7904 Ashbrook Cove, Germantown, 38138. I was really so glad to hear that Germantown was going to embrace a statement supporting diversity, and it just really made me feel great. And when I heard that one of the aldermen didn't understand why we would need that, I just had to come forward to support the resolution for diversity. That may not be what it's called, but I think you know what I'm talking about. And my family's been in the Memphis area for 6 generations, and it would make me proud to be in Germantown if we did this, if we supported diversity and stood against hate and blame and scapegoating. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, I asked if there was anyone. I gave a last call. I want to be fair. Anyone like to come forward? That concludes citizens to be heard, and that takes us to item number 9 on the agenda this evening. Item number 9 is our consent agenda. I will go through each item one by one, reading them into the record, and then we'll have a motion here in a moment. Item 9A, donation, fire department, LAFS program. Item 9B, donation, small fry triathlon. Item 9C, grant, Germantown Community Theater. Item 9D, right-of-way acquisition, Track 10, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard, intersection improvement project. Item E, right-of-way acquisition, Track 11, Germantown Road, Wolf River Boulevard, intersection improvement project. Item F, right-of-way acquisition, Track 22, Germantown Road. Item G, 9G, agreement, REGIS funding participation. Item 9H, purchase of a mower. Item J, purchase dump truck. I'm sorry, that was I. Item J, change order number 2, Germantown Athletic Club renovation, Phase 2, project closeout. Item K, Shelby County property reappraisal payment. And item L, professional services agreement, CDBG 2011 disaster recovery grant. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified?
Move to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Massey,
Abstain.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Yonda,
Yes.
Alderman Garcia,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Houston.
Yes.
The consent agenda passes as modified. Brings us to item number 10 on the agenda this evening. Resolution number 17R16, a resolution of the City of Germantown to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry. I'll make this presentation this evening. I think it gives this community a certain amount of understanding. If I take a moment and read to you the Germantown Forward 2030 vision statement and community values. This is a document that the city worked on, the people worked on, the community worked on for the better part of the entire 2015 year. A steering committee of 30 people, some that are in this room this evening, came forward to lead us in this work to provide a long-term 20 to 30-year strategic plan that this city could follow to the best of its abilities. The vision statement, Germantown is a vibrant, modern community, the community of choice, offering outstanding quality of life for all generations. The government is fiscally sound and provides top-quality public safety and services responsive to community requirements. Engaged residents honor the past, treasure the present, and responsibly shape Germantown's future. The community values the following things: excellence in education, innovation, creativity, and continuous improvement. Lifestyle opportunities is part of the fabric of everyday life. Natural and designed beauty and smart growth. Community strength, health, and sustainability. And the one that's my favorite, a culture of excellence and kindness. And finally, local and regional partnerships. With a note to a culture of excellence and kindness, last week I had the opportunity to speak with peers locally across the state and nationally to take part in the U.S. Council of Mayors resolution to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry. And so I bring that to you this evening as something that I'm very glad the community is here and almost filling our temporary chambers. I will tell the community this. Over the last few days, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has been inundated with a lot of different messages. I will tell you from a personal standpoint, I'm very appreciative of the number of people that contacted me. I got many emails, many phone calls. I was out of town for 2 days representing the city in Orlando, but they didn't stop coming, and I do appreciate that. Overwhelmingly, people were very supportive. Of course, there were the occasional conversations of, tell me more about this. I'd like to have more information. What does this mean to the community? Is it binding? Is it something that we'll have to put into effect in ordinance or law? So all those questions were very good questions. And as expected, there were a few phone calls that were completely opposed to this resolution. But generally, those conversations were centered around not necessarily the content, but just more about the structure. And so, I mentioned earlier about Germantown being a community of kindness. Let me just give you a few examples of why this resolution resonates so well in your community. In your community, you are a kind community. You have a council of faith with all your churches that come together, those that have churches within our communities, and also congregations that don't. We don't have a synagogue or a mosque in Germantown. We invite clergy from both those communities to participate in our council of faith. Very ecumenical and very diverse. We have conversations about how we bring secular and non-secular together at times. We have a civic club council made up of Kiwanis, Rotarians, Germantown Women's Club, Germantown Charity Horse Show, about 30 organizations that meet on a regular basis to define charity and kindness in our community. Our high school has an honors academy. It's great. We also have a service and leadership academy for those students that may not be the perfect academic profile. That program develops leaders in our community that have a conscience, that want to contribute to the well-being of their community. We have 3 significantly large festivals in our community. We have the Germantown Festival I mentioned earlier. We have the new Oktoberfest that will be held later this fall, and the Germantown Charity Horse Show. All 3 of those were started to provide charitable giving in this community and throughout the region. In 2018, we'll launch the Germantown Volunteer Corps to bring people even closer together to, again, exhibit kindness. And this past weekend, we had our 8th annual Germantown International Festival. As a speaker mentioned earlier, we've got a tremendous amount of diversity in our community, represented by many nationalities. My parents are first-generation immigrants to this country. And finally, we also have something that a lot of people sometimes forget. Our community started Cop Stop. And Cop Stop, if you're not familiar, some of the people here in attendance this evening have actually hosted a Cop Stop. And a Cop Stop is where our community, our residents cook a home-cooked meal for our officers. They bring neighborhoods together, they invite that shift into their home, and they feed our officers. One of the things that's paramount about this resolution, and I think a lot of people forget at times, a lot of laws have been enacted throughout the country. Matter of fact, 12 states have enacted tougher hate laws that target men and women in uniforms. And so I think, a community that starts Cop Stop actually fully recognizes how important our law enforcement and first responders are in this country. So this led me to join and hopefully join and collaborate with 300 plus other mayors from around this country. This resolution came from the tragic events that occurred in Charlottesville. 2 troopers were killed. One was an alum and a graduate of Germantown High School, and an innocent bystander was also murdered. And so there's the sense of urgency in the sense of mayors from around the country coming together. These things have occurred in the past as well, but this occurred recently, and that's why the U.S. Conference of Mayors created the Compact Against Hate, Bigotry, and Extremism. I had a lot of memorable conversations in just 5 days, and the one that stands out the most for me as a mayor is I spoke to a young mother with 3 children in our GMSD schools, and basically I will give you a little bit of anecdotally what she shared with me. It was very quick conversation, and she said, I can go ahead and assure you that hate is not welcome in my home, and neither is it welcome in my neighborhood. My family has conversations on a regular basis, and those conversations revolve around inclusion, tolerance, bullying, and treating others very, very fairly. That's one of our families, the core of our community, young families that come into this community. So I would like to read one other thing that I received today as we had Citizens to be Heard. I would like to read, and he wanted to be here this evening, our former alderman and our current county commissioner, Mark Billingsley, sent an email that he would ask to be read into the record, and I'll read it verbatim. And this is from, again, Commissioner Mark Billingsley, who represents the Germantown area and other areas of Shelby County as well. I would respectfully ask this communication be read in tonight's BMA record. Mayor and Aldermen of Germantown, I had hoped to attend tonight's Germantown Mayor and Board of Aldermen meeting. However, I have an executive session and commission meeting this afternoon with the Shelby County Commission. While I have historically not commented on specific issues related to your body, I feel compelled to share my personal beliefs with you as a former Germantown Alderman, former Germantown Reserve Police officer, current Germantown resident, and Germantown's designated Shelby County Commission representative. As public servants, our constituents look to us for representation and leadership. Therefore, I support your leadership in publicly denouncing hate, extremism, and bigotry. Some have chosen to question, why is the city of Germantown getting involved in this issue? I would respond in the words of Martin Luther King, who said, history will have to record that the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition was not the strident clamor of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. Our world is in a different place today, and as elected officials, we are called to be the examples and protect those who are troubled and in need of their rights. That's from Psalm 82:3. There are groups that do not want all to enjoy the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Therefore, it is relevant and important that the mayor and aldermen of Germantown let all know that our community of Germantown will not tolerate hate, extremism, and bigotry in our city. I thank you in advance for your leadership on this critical issue and at this critical time. Please know your efforts do not go unnoticed by all in Shelby County. I wholeheartedly support this effort. Respectfully, Mark Billingsley, County Commissioner. I will just conclude by sharing with the public, some people have made mention about political posturing or political grandstanding or making this an ideological issue or a partisan issue. I would say that it's none of the above. My party that I belong to, the Republican Party, just passed this past Friday, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, at their conference in Nashville, unanimously approved a similar resolution. And in my opinion, it was actually much more strongly worded than ours tonight. And I will just conclude and tell you this, that some people would say do nothing. Some people would give you comments and things that would distract you from what's really going on in our culture and society. Some people would give you what-if scenarios and have you take your eye off the ball, so to speak. It's very, very simple. This is a demonstrated value of our city, our residents, and our community. So with that said, I will read this resolution into the record. A resolution of the City of Germantown to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry. Whereas the City of Germantown will continue to be the beacon for inclusion, tolerance, and respect for all, we will continue to support and embrace our community vision and values through a strong culture of kindness and compassion for all within our community. And whereas the City of Germantown expressly rejects extremism, white supremacy, and all forms of bigotry, and denounce all acts of hate wherever they occur. And whereas the City of Germantown will work to ensure the public safety for all while protecting free speech and other basic constitutional rights, and supports fully resourced law enforcement and civil rights investigations of domestic terrorism and hate crime. Pardon me. And whereas the City of Germantown supports celebrating diversity, promoting inclusivity, and challenging bias by bringing together civic and community leaders to build trust throughout the community. And whereas the City of Germantown supports law enforcement training on responding to and reporting incidents of hate, hate crimes, and domestic terrorism, and encourages our residents to report hate incidents and crimes to the Germantown Police Department or other law enforcement agencies. Now therefore, be it resolved, the City of Germantown supports the Mayor's Compact to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry, and supports the Mayor's efforts to work with executive and legislative partners at federal and state levels to ensure that civil rights laws are aggressively enforced, existing hate crime laws are strengthened as needed, and new laws are enacted to ensure that all hate crimes are prosecutable in their jurisdiction to the greatest extent possible. Is there a motion to approve Resolution number 17R16, a resolution of the City of Germantown to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry?
Move to approve.
There's a motion by the Vice Mayor and a second by Alderman Yonda. Discussion, please.
Yeah.
Alderman Barzis.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to make a statement in regards to hate, bigotry, and this type of lawlessness. First of all, I'm Italian-American, Catholic Italian-American. Catholics have taken on the chin. When I was growing up out here, I was looked down upon as a Catholic. There wasn't a lot of us out here. And being Italian on top of that was even more distressing. But more so, my grandparents on both sides came from the old country. My mother's father actually worked in the fields of Louisiana and Mississippi during the Reconstruction period. He was much older than my grandmother. What's really close to home is that my older, profoundly mentally handicapped son, when he was at a developmental center here in the state, about 1990, was so severely beaten by a staff member that John was in the hospital for a week. When I got home, I was on a trip, got home after he was convalesced. I took him back to the facility, and I was accosted by a staff member who had to be hired on a kite on something, okay, whatever. I say that also to say that his uncle, who also was out at the same program, when he was about 36 years old, was raped twice on 2 different occasions. So bigotry, anger, and hatred hits close to home, just like it, Mr. Steinberg. Thank you. And so, I feel very, very involved in this as far as the family is concerned. But what concerns me is that we really needed a little more information for the public to digest. And on the surface, there was a tremendous amount of misunderstanding on the part of many of the citizens in Germantown. As the mayor did and the rest of the aldermen did, we all received calls, many messages, pro and con. I truly believe that the message itself could be tweaked a little bit, as stated by, what's her name? I'm sorry, Ms. Sneed. So I make the motion, considering the fact that there is so much misunderstanding or lack of information, and I think the mayor did a pretty credible job in giving his message as to why he is proposing this. But I make the motion that we postpone the vote, have a public hearing, so the mayor can articulate to the public in this building, it may be the entire building, who knows how many people will attend. But I think it's very important, and it's something as serious as this matter, especially how it hits close to my home, to my family, and to probably many of you out there, and many of the citizens of Germantown. So I make the motion that we hold this. I make the motion that we defer the meeting. Thank you, Mayor. We defer the vote on this, and we have a public hearing, so the people of Germantown will be more aware and understand as to what the message is all about that the mayor is trying to deliver.
Thank you. There's a motion to defer and to hold a public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Alderman Owens,
No.
Alderman Yonda,
No.
Alderman Barzisa,
Yes.
Vice Mayor
No.
Alderman Massey.
Yes.
The motion fails. We return to discussion. Alderman Massey?
Yes, I made some notes while I was listening to you read Commissioner Billingsley's comments, and it reminded me of another quote by Martin Luther King, and that quote is, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only hate can do that." To me, the resolution is fairly dark. It does more to divide us than it does to unite us. And I think we can do better. I think that the legislation, and I realize it's not a law, but it's still legislation that's come before the board, should have originated with this body. I think we can make changes that do more to unite us than to divide us, and I think that this body should take the responsibility to do that. I think it's too easy for politicians to hide behind the veils and promote resolutions rather than taking individual actions. You know, I want to say unequivocally that I condemn all hatred and supremacy ideology. I'm doing that as an individual. Whether it comes from the left, the right, Republicans or Democrats, extremist views on all sides are shaking the very foundations of the United States of America. And I condemn it in the strongest possible terms, and I do it individually. But I would caution everyone against giving politicians the power to use state action to discriminate against viewpoints with which they disagree. As I was leaving tonight, I read an email from one of the people that signed the petition. He said, it's pretty hurtful, frankly. He said, "I will work actively to guarantee that you are a one-and-done cracker." That is a bad term to describe white people. So hatred works on both sides of this thing, and we need to resolve it on both sides. We don't need to condemn one side of the hatred. We need to condemn all sides of the hatred. So I want to give you a little background on myself. When I was in college, my mentor and professor was a man named Chester Quarles. Chester was my professor, but he was also a good friend, was very influential in my life and the way I looked at the world. Chester was a terrorism expert long before the tragic events of 9/11, but he was also a Baptist minister, as is one of his sons today. Chester loved to tell stories about his career in law enforcement and fights to ensure equality for all Mississippians. As a little background on Chester, his father started a secret seminary for black ministers in Piney Woods, Mississippi, and endured a lot of abuse in the process. Chester himself testified against 22 Klansmen in Mississippi, and the Klan actually put a hit out on his life. He was placed on Martin Luther King's protection detail, which was an honor to him, but he later learned that he got the detail because he was one of the few troopers who was willing to say yes, sir, to a black man. Ironically, Chester later invited a former Klansman named Tommy Terrence to live in his home. Tommy turned his life around, gave it to Christ, and eventually pastored a biracial church in Washington, D.C. And today, Tommy is the president of the C.S. Lewis Institute in Washington, D.C. Chester encouraged me to make an effort to understand other races and other cultures because he felt like it was an important tool for law enforcement officers, and I hope he would be proud of the effort that I made in college, my career, and my life in general. Chester also instilled in me the importance of protecting the Constitution and the rule of law, for it is the rule of law that ultimately ensures equality. The language in the resolution was drafted so broadly that it could be used to condemn legitimate political or religious viewpoints simply because a politician personally deems the views intolerant, regardless of whether or not the viewpoints are actually extremist in nature. What process will politicians use to determine which views should be condemned and censored in the future? Why does the resolution encourage resolutions to report non-criminal incidents to the Germantown police or law enforcement agencies? How might this new official policy be used against city employees who express views that local politicians deem intolerant, based on the politician's own personal definition of intolerance? So while this may not be a law, it certainly has the look of policy. Since the resolution failed to include other violent political groups, people have commented that the inaction can be taken as governmental approval of those groups' extremist viewpoints and activities. The resolution could have easily been drafted to succinctly condemn all hatred and supremacy ideology, but it wasn't. We are placing the First Amendment on slippery slope if we give politicians in each city across America the power to decide which viewpoints will be tolerated in each individual city based on the politician's personal or political motivations rather than the rule of law. Bigotry is defined broadly as intolerance toward those who hold different views from oneself. Please note that bigotry can pertain solely to intolerance toward views rather than intolerance based on race, national origin, religion, and sex. What happens when you happen to be in a city where the public officials label you a bigot because of your personal political or religious views, which may not be extremist or supremacist views at all? So at this time, I would also like to make a motion to defer this vote tonight. I think there's a lot that this community needs to consider before we get on this slippery slope and go any further. We can create legislation that unites us and not divides us, and that legislation should arise from your legislative body, the 5 aldermen on this board. This resolution was originated from the city administrator and the mayor. These types of things should be done by your legislative body. We can talk about it tonight. I think we can come to an agreement on how we can change this language, how we can make it better. Then we can put it on the agenda for a vote at a later date. But I don't think that this resolution accomplishes what the majority of our citizens want to accomplish.
Mayor, point of order.
Thank you. Yes.
We have already voted.
The deferment has been settled, so there's no amendment or motion that's been settled. That issue has.
I'd ask the city attorney if it would not be more appropriate for the legislative body to draft this legislation, this resolution, rather than it originating from the city administrator's office and the mayor.
Well, Alderman, what you have at this point is a resolution that was proposed by the mayor, that was presented by the city administration. There has been a motion to approve it that's before you now. It's perfectly appropriate for the mayor, as the chief executive officer of the city, to present proposed resolutions for this board to consider. It's up to this board to take it and consider it in any fashion that it wishes.
You still have a couple of minutes. You have the floor. Would you like to yield the floor, Alderman?
Well, I'd like to know if any of my fellow aldermen are interested in amending this language or possibly making the decision to defer this so that we can take more time to have council review this and come up with some language that we all agree is better.
I'm not interested in deferring.
Yeah, that issue has been settled again for the second time. Alderman Gibson.
I did have a point of question.
All right.
This is the resolution we're talking about right here, right?
Correct.
It's a one-page resolution, right?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor.
Or Vice Mayor, sorry.
When I received my BMA packet on Thursday with the rest of my colleagues, I read the resolution denouncing hatred, bigotry, and extremism very carefully, as I'm certain that they did as well. I was struck by how we live in a world of extremes, or so it seems these days. I reached out to administration and advised them of my intent to ask that we move the resolution to be considered after the citizens to be heard portion of the agenda, because I wanted to ensure that any citizen who wanted to speak, pro or con, had that opportunity to be heard. To be clear, it was not because I changed my position on whether or not I support the resolution. The events that occurred in Charlottesville hit close to home with Lieutenant Jay Cullen's death. He was a graduate of Germantown High School and was tragically killed while monitoring the violent white supremacist protest as a Virginia state trooper. In speaking with citizens over the last several days, the majority have been supportive, but with each call, each email or text, I listened with respect to those who disagreed with me and was able to share my thoughts on the why now, why here in Germantown questions that were raised by those in opposition to the resolution. Why should Germantown, Tennessee, a community that values kindness and love of neighbor already, raise a voice in opposition to hatred, bigotry, and extremism? To answer that question, I've got to tell a story, so bear with me just a moment. I used to tell in our confirmation classes when we taught the lesson on sharing our gifts with others, we would have 2 12-year-olds stand with a single strand of thin yarn and then ask another child to see if they could break the chain. The class saw how easily one solitary strand broke when karate chopped by a 6th grader. The next confirmand stood with a ball of yarn, and each child took a turn, making what ultimately became a rope made out of colorful threads that were not easily broken, even under great pressure. The lesson that was together, they were stronger, and so when I see a resolution that simply states that we, Germantown, Tennessee, choose to speak with one voice against words and actions that contradict what we value as a community, I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak when others are silent. We don't just talk the talk here. Germantown acts in so many ways, in so many loving ways. And to name just a few, I know the mayor brought forward a couple. Team Read was founded by Germantown residents to mentor 2nd graders in the greater Memphis area, to ensure students have over 2,000 sight words mastered before they reach that pivotal 3rd grade year, where 73% of all 3rd graders are not proficient at grade level. The Team Read coaching model is being used all over our state as a way to close the gap in student achievement. The mayor mentioned Cop Stop. Joanna and Bob Young founded Cop Stop as a way for our first responders to be celebrated and to be respected in our city, and that has spread to over 27 counties and 8 states. Room in the Inn initiative with our faith community works to house the homeless on nights when no human being should be out on that cold night or without shelter. These are only a few ways where our actions speak louder and stronger than any words in a resolution. A resolution stands as a decision to do or not do something. And as it applies to a legislative body like the BMA, it's an agreed upon intention. A resolution doesn't bind this board or any future board to any pending or future litigation or legislation. While we can have a good discussion on this resolution, I don't feel the need to parse the words hatred, bigotry, extremism. Why now? Because it's time now. In my letter to Karen Cullen, I thanked her for her husband's bravery and for his service to our country. Jay Cullen's presence will be forever absent in his family's life. Clearly, they will feel the weight of those actions. We need to continue meaningful dialogue about things that matter. I value freedom of speech, but there is no place in this world for extremism of any kind. I pray that we can continue the conversation in a way that brings honor to Jay's life and purpose to ours. I'm proud to speak with one voice in support of this resolution denouncing hatred, bigotry, and extremism. Thank you.
Alderman Owens or Yonda? Alderman Yonda?
Yes. You know, the mayor has managed the paradoxical feat of being a politician without politics. This is not political, in my opinion.
He believes, as I do, in doing the right thing, not what is easy. This is easy. A resolution of the City of Germantown to combat hate, extremism, and bigotry. It's the right thing to do. I looked for the quote that I have liked all my life. It's supposedly Edmund Burke. They said they couldn't find it in his papers. It may have been Thomas Jefferson to a certain extent. But the quote is, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men," and I'd like to add, and women, "to do nothing." That's my report on that. That's my feelings.
Alderman Owens.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of statements. I believe that it is imperative for Germantown to take a formal position that we condemn white supremacists, denounce racism, and oppose discrimination whenever we see it. There should be no ambiguity that the City of Germantown condemns hate groups and their racist beliefs. These like-minded groups are completely inconsistent with our community of kindness, and they have no fruitful place in this city. As a leader, I believe it is our moral duty to speak out against racism. And having grown up in this city, I am fully aware that I am a white male of privilege, and so I know very little about discrimination. But I do know that I have friends in this town and elsewhere who are minorities and who have experienced such racism, such prejudice, and discrimination. It is very important for me and for this board to have all of our residents be safe and visitors be safe when they are in this city. And I believe that this resolution is a step in the right direction towards that. I proudly support this resolution with which we are speaking one voice, along with 200 other mayors, with a non-binding resolution to say that hate, bigotry, and extremism is wrong. And I call on all of us with privilege and power to confront racism and white supremacy head on. To remain silent is to give power and credence to those who would do evil. Mayor, with that, I would like to call the question.
Question's called. It's been called and seconded. Please call the roll on the question.
Alderman Yonda?
Yes.
Alderman Barteza?
I'm going to abstain for the following reasons. Because of the fact that I felt that the public needed to know, the broad public needed to know, and that I requested, and my esteemed colleagues decided we didn't need to go any further to educate the public. That's the reason why I'm abstaining. I'm certainly not against the resolution. I think you got my message before in regards to my son, my brother-in-law, and my grandparents. And it goes deeper, and it goes much deeper, and you know, within our family, but within our community and our country. But you know, the people of this community were questioning me, why is this happening, and this and I can't disagree with what they are saying, and they're saying that they wanted clarification. And the mayor was so eloquently delivered an incredible message as to the whys of this resolution. And I was requesting a postponement and a time that the public could hear directly from him in mass in this building so they would better understand. So, you know, in a way, those are here and those are watching or on TV. You got the message and you understand the whole process and what was going on in the mayor's mind in this resolution. But I guarantee you there are hundreds and hundreds of people out there that truly don't. Again, I'm sorry that I'll have to abstain, and that's the only reason that I'm abstaining, because I certainly agree with the measure in itself.
Vice Mayor Gibson?
Yes.
Alderman Massey?
So the motion to call the question means that we are cutting off the discussion. I disagree with that. I think we should have had the full discussion on this issue tonight. Before I came, one of my friends called me and he said, you know, Dean, this resolution just creates more conflict in Germantown than it does to solve problems. He said, if a bunch of neo-Nazis shows up in Germantown, he said, I'm going to be on the front row fighting those guys. And that's what we need. We need each of these aldermen up here to say that they individually are willing to put themselves and their families' lives on the line to fight extremism and true white supremacy that puts all of our country in danger. Not just things that make us feel uncomfortable, but things that literally undermine the foundation of our country. So with that said...
Point of order, Mayor?
No.
Yes.
Is this a time of our voting, or is there time
Once
for
again,
discussion?
cutting off discussion. You don't want the people to know the truth.
Well, hold
None
on
of
now.
you want the people to know the truth
Point of
about
order.
what you're doing.
Point of order is proper, and that is where you can interrupt a speaker. And so, yes, right now, I gave a little bit of leeway with Alderman Berzizza, but the measure is on whether you're voting yes, no, or abstaining, Alderman.
To the motion to stop the discussion, I'm voting no because I think we should have continued the discussion.
Duly noted.
Alderman Massey,
He said no.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
The motion to,
Say it again, though.
the motion to call the question passes. So now we're at the question. It was properly motioned and seconded. Please call the roll on the resolution, clerk.
Alderman Berzizza,
Abstain for the aforementioned reasons.
Vice Mayor Gibson,
Yes.
Alderman Massey,
I believe the resolution is overly broad and could infringe upon our constitutional rights. Nevertheless, I do not want to be seen as not being opposed to supremacist ideology, which I have already stated I am opposed to in unequivocal terms. Nevertheless, because of the concerns that I have for the constitutional problems that this could create, I am going to abstain.
Alderman Owens,
Yes.
Alderman Young,
I don't know where we're getting all this information from on this resolution, because I don't think it has anything other than a resolution on bigotry and hate and extremism, so I'm a yes.
The motion carries. Appreciate the support of the board. I hope that this continues a conversation in our community. I want to thank our audience for being here tonight and being very calm and exercising great decorum. This meeting is adjourned.